Wicked's thrillifying first part is stuffed with wonderful Easter eggs and delightful details that hide some big secrets about what we can look forward to in part 2. Yippee-ki-yay movie lovers, in this video I'm revealing some Wicked part 2 clues, plus amazing tributes and deep cut hat tips hidden in the movie. So stick with me because I've definitely found some you haven't seen yet. Spoilers ahead! Right from the start, the new movie foreshadows that Elfie's sister Nessarose will ultimately become the Wicked Witch of the East and don those famous black and white stockings and ruby slippers like her 1930s counterpart. Look carefully when she's a young child and you'll spot that she's wearing long striped socks as well as red shoes with little red bows. Then as a young adult she sports more subtly striped ankle socks, and another lovely detail is the particular shade of blue of her shoes as well as their little blue bows, both of which are a nostalgic nod to the similar shade of dress and ankle socks worn by her nemesis Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, whose house flattens the Wicked Witch of the East. There are various sly winks foreshadowing Fiyero's fate in part 2 and the fact that in the stage show he turns into the Scarecrow. After bumping into Elfie on his way to Shiz University, Fiyero offers her a ride on his horse, to which she replies, "Get stuffed." The choreography for his song Dancing Through Life features him kicking and tossing aside books, in a nice visual nod to his mindless Scarecrow counterpart in the classic film, who famously sang "If I Only Had a Brain." Then there's the blonde highlights in his hair, an allusion to his future hay-headed character, as well as the Scarecrow-like poses he sometimes strikes. And just before they head to Oz, Glinda tells Elfie that Fiyero's been acting differently. "He's thinking," she says, which really worries me. Madame Morrible's silvery white hair was deliberately styled to look like swirling clouds, but did you also notice that at other times she's given a decidedly windswept look, and even has a ponytail that's twisted around itself to resemble a tornado, all of which is a deliciously subtle reference to her character's power over the weather and how in Wicked she's responsible for the tornado that brings Dorothy to Oz. And the weather also inspired Morrible's clothing, including her gown with its swirling pattern and diaphanous poofy sleeves and décolletage. Boq introduces himself to Fiyero as Boq Woodsman in a nod to the Tin Woodman from L. Frank Baum's Oz novels, who's better known as the Tin Man in the classic movie. And this is a pointer to the fact that in Wicked Part 2, Boq will become the Tin Man when a spell by Nessarose goes wrong. A much more subtle reference that I love to Boq becoming the heartless Tin Man is the way that Glinda clutches Boq's red handkerchief over her own heart before placing it underneath the left side of his sweater vest. Costume designer Paul Tazewell used butterflies as inspiration for Glinda's outfits throughout the movie to highlight her power of flight. On top of that, butterflies are also often used in film and fiction to symbolise transformation, which gives Glinda's butterfly looks a nice extra dimension given how her character develops and changes over the course of both films. And butterflies are again used for their transformational meaning when masses of them take to the skies during Elfie's song The Wizard and I, where she imagines her life changing for the better thanks to the wizard. As for Elfie's clothes, they repeatedly feature subtly embroidered triangles in a deliberate reflection of her witch's hat, while her glasses are shaped like an infinity symbol to emphasise the fact that her future is unlimited. And when it comes to Nessarose, the floral embroidery on her costumes is both a nod to her name and a clever callback to her mother, because her father made his pregnant wife chew milk flowers to prevent their second child being green. Plus, young Nessa's dress has echoes of Dorothy's white outfit from Return to Oz. Now for one of my favourite images in the movie, which is the opening scene. There's much more to this than just the Wicked Witch's iconic hat in a puddle of water as a reference to her death in The Wizard of Oz. The way the camera pans over the floor, eventually revealing a round window and the witch's hat mirrored upside down in the puddle, sends a strong, clear message that our preconceived ideas about the Wicked Witch of the West will be turned upside down by this movie, as they were by the stage show and Maguire's novel before that. I really love this image because it manages to sum up the essence of the story in one simple visual. Also, when we first meet young Glinda arriving at Shiz University, she's shot from below the water, again emphasising that this story will give a different angle on the well-known tale of the Good Witch, providing instead a deeper perspective and going below the surface of the stories of both Glinda and Elfie, showing that things are not always what they first appear. By the way, is Glinda arriving at university with a literal boatload of pink luggage, giving anyone else mad Legally Blonde vibes of Elle arriving at college with an actual full-size moving truck. When Nessarose first receives her sparkly slippers, the design of the shoes is a striking little love letter to multiple moments in The Wizard of Oz, with the spiral design on their heels which swirls upwards around the foot being a hat tip to how Dorothy arrived in Oz via a tornado, something we might also see in part 2. And in another nice touch, these semicircular shapes on the side are reminiscent of rainbows. Plus, the interior of the box is sparkling ruby red like Dorothy's slippers, while the shoes themselves are silver, as they were in L. Frank Baum's wonderful Wizard of Oz novel. And there's another wonderful homage to the iconic slippers during the song Popular, when Glinda offers Elfie a pair of sparkly red shoes and taps their heels together 3 times, just as Dorothy does to return home to Kansas. And in a delightfully meta moment, Glinda grabs the shoes back off Elfie and tosses them aside as she sings the line, "You've got an awfully long way to go," which is true for both Elfie and the audience, because at this particular point we're only a bit over halfway through part 1 of the 2-part franchise. There are also clues to the wizard's origins, which will undoubtedly be revealed in part 2. For example, on various items in the tower where Elphaba enchants her flying broom, and on boxes and posters with the wizard's real name, Oscar Diggs. Plus there's illustrations of magic wands and lions because he once worked as a circus magician. Also, the wizard came from Omaha, Nebraska, as you can see on this piece of luggage and on the hot air balloon inspired contraption that delivers Elfie's Emerald City invitation, which is also a nod to how he arrived in Oz and how Elfie and Glinda will later try to escape it. And more balloons pop up in the movie, including the stone carving of the wizard at Shiz University. Plus, when the wizard's picture cracks revealing animals underneath, it foreshadows that the real Wicked One in this story is actually the wizard himself. And the big clue that the wizard is Elfie's biological father comes at the start of the movie, when Jeff Goldblum is heard, but not seen, singing with her mother just before she's born. In a moment that's sure to have fans rejoicifying, Wicked's OG Broadway stars Idina Menzel and Kristin Chenoweth pop up as stars of Wizomania. They're decked out in pink and purple gossamer gowns to look like goddesses. The costume designer even uses similar textures as he has done at various points on Elfie and Glinda, so there's lots of micro pleating and wave patterns but blown up to make them deliberately OTT theatrical. The scene's an absolute treat, with the Wicked legends performing some hilariously scandalous stage hogging, as well as dropping a ton of hat tips to their original characters. Chenoweth struggles to get her orb working as Glinda does her wand during Popular. She also showcases her signature baton twirling, and Menzel performs her famous battle cry. Plus, there's that trapdoor moment, a nod to Elfie's stage exit and re-emergence in the musical. And there's a both touching and funny moment, with Menzel approvingly touching Cynthia Erivo's witch hat, and Chenoweth gently cupping Ariana Grande's face before cutting short her high note. The man behind our favourite Wicked songs, composer Stephen Schwartz, is the guard who announces the wizard will see you now. His look, including his curly moustache and the way he pops up, is a homage to the gatekeeper from the classic movie, plus the movie's co-writer and show's librettist, Winnie Holtzman, appears as an Emerald City resident. Wizomania also gives us the movie's take on the Palace Guard from The Wizard of Oz, and their stilt-enhanced height is a hat tip to their very tall counterpart, the soldier with the green whiskers in Baum's books. And alongside them, you can see the show's flatheads. When Madame Morrible protects Elfie from the rain with her umbrella, adding "mustn't let you get wet," it's a nice bit of foreshadowing for part 2, as well as a clear callback to The Wizard of Oz, the Broadway show, and Geoffrey Maguire's book. However, there's a much less obvious but absolutely gorgeous little detail in this scene, and that's the tiny little crystals shaped like raindrops all around the edge of the material on Morrible's umbrella. By the way, I talk more about the true story behind Elphaba's supposed vulnerability to water in my video on part 2. I'll add a link to that at the end of this video. Look out for the brightly coloured glass decoration hanging from the ceiling during The Wizard and I, as it represents the colours of the various regions of Oz from Baum's novels. And those colours appear again when the wizard asks Elfie and Glinda to help him decide on a colour for the yellow brick road. When Elphaba gets angry after she learns about the plan to cage animals, she slams a bouquet of poppies down in the classroom. This activates her magic, and as the poppies spiral through the room, they send everyone except Fiyero to sleep. This moment is a throwback to The Wizard of Oz, where the Wicked Witch casts a spell on a field of poppies that makes Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion very sleepy. In that scene, the Scarecrow and Tin Man were both unaffected, and in Wicked, Fiyero is also unaffected, in a hint to audiences that he'll ultimately become the Scarecrow. Boq, our future Tin Man, however, does fall asleep, because after all he is fully human here, unlike the Tin Man. So what I think is really going on is that Elfie has a crush on Fiyero, and so subconsciously protects him from the effects of her magic. When Elfie sings The Wizard and I, watch out for the bluebirds that fly up suddenly at 2 different points in a throwback to the happy little bluebirds in the song Over the Rainbow. Plus, for good measure, we get several shots of rainbows too. And the moment where she runs over fields up a hill to the edge gives me real Maria in The Sound of Music vibes. And to find out more about part 2, tap here to discover who this mysterious horse rider is, and why Fiyero the Scarecrow being with Dorothy means the ending of the second movie will be massively different to the Broadway musical. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers, thanks for enjoying Wicked with me, and I'll see you next time.